Yes, is LORIE ELAM there? Well, do this differently.
Community services.
Yes, when will LORIE ELAM be in? I cannot leave a message about this.
Okay. She's in now. I'm showing that she's on the phone.
I can hold.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay, sir, can I tell her who's calling?
Yes, you can tell her it's Jeff Soboroff.
Soberoff?
Yes.
Okay. Alright, hold on, please.
But in this case, I'm really Dmitry Ivanovich. Well, I've been told to call back in a few minutes, so I'm going to wait 5 minutes and I'm going to call back. Now, in 5 minutes, this woman is bolting right now. LORIE ELAM, please. Hello, Miss Elam. I have encountered a situation in the Quad Cities which I find absolutely astonishing. And history repeats itself. Even if it takes 32 years. I was beaten up at at Mercy Hospital facilities, which, of course, as you have to know, when they changed their name to Genesis, the administration remained the same. Now, some 30 years ago, I was misdiagnosed. And I know that I was misdiagnosed because after the hospital charged me with a Class X felony, there were 8 months worth of hearings. And the felony allegedly occurred after the hospital had given me a doses of drugs which were actually contraindicated for the condition that the court found that I actually had after they sent me out of this area to a private physician who was not involved with any kind of state hospital system. Well, after a competent psychiatrist examined me for a year, he determined that there wasn't anything wrong with me emotionally. But he did discover that 2 policemen, who for 20 years had been beating the hell out of long-haired bearded males with nightsticks, and had earned the moniker of Bump and Thump among their comrades on the Scott County Police Force. These guys, I encountered them at Beethoven's. They saw that my hair was down in my butt and my beard was down in my belly button. I was a studio musician. I was making $500 an hour in studios. And then these guys hit me on my head because they didn't like the way I looked, and they didn't like the direction that I looked in. And at the time, my attorney was able to get a hold of a private detective called Mark Urban, and Mr. Urban confirmed what I saw. And what I saw was these 2 policemen standing in the dance floor when I walked in, and there were people exchanging snow seals for money. Do you know what a snow seal is? A snow seal is a piece of origami. You take a little piece of paper and they fold it up so it doesn't come apart, and they put a gram of cocaine in it. That's a snow seal. A gram of cocaine at that time went for between $90 and $120. This is what they were doing at Beethoven's when I walked in, with my hair down to my butt and my beard down past my crotch. I looked just like ZZ Top. And I'm noticing this, and I don't care because I'm a totally counterculture person. And the thing is, and at that time, a number of my friends had died that I had met in music. And these people were better looking than me, they were better dressed, they were better spoken, they were better musicians. I started playing with these guys when I was like 13 and 14 years old. And but 2 of them, by the time I was 16, had self-destructed with on cocaine and probably some other extra ingredients. So this has never been my risibility. And and how things come full circle sometimes in our lives. And I get crippled at Beethoven's bar because what it was discovered I had was not a mental illness, other than that these 2 guys, by hitting me right behind my right ear with a nightstick, had given me postparietal seizures. These seizures, I would have 1 seizure a day. And Mercy Hospital didn't want to test me. Now the thing about a head injury and this area, and what because I've been investigated this for 30 years. So, and I'm going to tell you, you could give me a poly if you want it. I'd pass it. So what I discovered is that whenever somebody got beaten up by Bump and Thump, and one of their friends had dragged them to the hospital, first of all, the hospital would throw them out because they didn't have insurance. They threw me out. You know how illegal that is? Well, I've got a videotape right now on YouTube. It proves that Dr. Lisa Davis lied to the magistrate who locked me down for 10 hours until I saw a shrink. Now, I was told I was supposed to talk real nice to this guy and he'd let me out. But I didn't talk very nice to him. I read him the riot act. I read him the part where 30 years ago, Genesis charged me with a Class X felony that I didn't commit. And they charged me with that Class X felony because after I woke up from a 6-day-long coma, and you can ask Julie Malik, she still works at the hospital. I was living with her at the time. I wake up from a 6-day coma. And Julie had discovered on the 2nd day of my coma that I was in a coma. Because I was up all night anyway after my head injury and just trying to putter around or do whatever I was doing. And when she came home from work and I was still sleeping, she thought, well, he's tired. And then she tried to wake me up for supper, and she couldn't. And she didn't think anything of it. I guess she didn't shake me or anything. So she went and had supper, and then she did her artwork, and she came to bed. And the next morning, she looked at me, and she noticed I had not moved a muscle. So she took my pulse, and she told me it was weak and thready when I was conscious. And she counted my respirations between 4 and 6. Now, after I got conked on the head and I couldn't play the guitar anymore, I never bummed off anybody in my life. And Julie loved me. But I didn't want her to pay all of the rent. I didn't want her to buy all the food. I'd always been able to cover my own end. But I couldn't play the guitar anymore. You know, when I was diagnosed, I was told that my ability to play the guitar, which at the time I was hit on my head, I was making $500 an hour in recording studios. I was told that that was a paranoid or grandiose delusion. And you know, when people at Vera French or Genesis West or any place hear a report from a person where they started to have a difficulty after they were hit on their head, that engages medical and psychiatric criteria. Do you have any idea what that psychiatric criteria is? Because if you don't, I'm going to tell you what it is, because I found this out in court. I found this out in court after the jury awarded me nearly $500,000 in punitive damages. That was not the actual damages. Now, because I invested my money with Merrill Lynch, I think you know what happened to it. So much for that. I was going to kill those two guys, the Campbell brothers, and my mother looks at me and she says, "It's only money." And what could I say? Because it was only money. You know, after I got that money, I met a person named Wanda Butler, who your agency locked in a crack house. You locked her in a crack house in 2008. And she had been locked in that crack house ever since she was an infant. I represented her at a Social Security appeal in 1996. I met her when she was 35 years old. Now, I had seen Wanda around before. I never talked to her, because I thought she would think I was just a dorky white guy and I wanted to bug her. But I'd seen her around. And you know, Wanda never acted untoward. She never treated anybody badly. She was never impolite to anybody. And she introduced herself to me one day, and she told me that she wanted to move away from her family, but she wouldn't tell me why. But I found out why she had to move away from the Butlers pretty quick. And she told me she couldn't get her money from a payee. And I told her, well, you've got to go to the Social Security Administration and tell them. And she told me that when she was a child, they locked her out of the office. And I learned that they locked her out of the office after she reported that her payee was prostituting her. And she told these people, and you know, I did an investigation which lasted from 1996 until 2008. I was a rich guy, like I told you, and I was able to pay people to help me do this investigation. And I hired people who were graduates of correctional facilities, because they had the look and they knew what I wanted to go after. And not only did I bust the Butlers and the Howards and a whole bunch of other family-run drug cartels. But I caught the Davenport, Rock Island, East Moline, etc. police involved with these scumbags in moving interstate drugs. And I put that on the web. As a matter of fact, due to my big mouth and having an acquaintance, Tom Geyer, who's actually with a real newspaper, we got Greg Collins shit-canned from being the head narcotics agent in Davenport. He was directly involved with my ex-in-laws. I did marry Wanda. I married Wanda to try to help her. Yet, the police and the court system and your system now has Wanda living with people who have raped her all of her life. And I know that's true. When I was a rich guy, I took Wanda to 3 shrinks and a very good 3 psychologists and a very good shrink who believed that her nightmares were repressed memories. And I know because I've seen a record from Children and Family Services, and because I have seen Children and Family Services and social services lack of care in their own mandates, I know that when Wanda is living someplace, a person who is adjudged to have her disability, which, by the way, that is not the disability she has. She's not mentally retarded. I know that because I lived with her for a long time. She's not mentally retarded, but she was sexually abused so much. I mean, what was done to her by the butlers, with the cooperation of your system, amounts to what they call MK mind control. You can see all about it on YouTube. Her abuse has reduced her to a state of, she's pathetic. And when she was living with me in Illinois, the authorities came into my house for no reason and dragged her out 12 times. Because people who are known drug dealers were telling them that I was giving her drugs, and that's why she wouldn't come home. They even did it when we were married. Now, on June 24th, at approximately 4 o'clock, after making recordings of hospital, I got these recordings. Right now, I am sitting in front of my laptop, and I got my webcam on, and I got my speakerphone on, and I'm talking to you. Because I know that when I'm dealing with your system, I had better be able to prove that I didn't use certain words, and I didn't threaten anybody, and I didn't do anything, because you people have allowed the hospital to prosecute me on false charges. I spent $8,000 for an attorney, and at the end of that episode, Judge Warling found, after he had cross-examined all these doctors that it took Doran Shifley 8 months to get into court, Dr. Garside's testifying. Now, I don't know if you personally knew Dr. Garside, but Dr. Garside was a tremendous alcoholic. He has a record. He was busted maybe a dozen times for driving drunk. And you know, Lane and Waterman are so good that this guy never lost his license. He never spent a minute in jail. And he never missed happy hour. This guy diagnosed me, this guy's talking to my parents, he finally gets my case after the last doctor nearly kills me with an overdose of drugs. And he tells my parents, well, I think Joe's problem is he has a fear of failure or a fear of success. Now, I don't know what kind of diagnosis that is. I certainly didn't have a fear of success before I got conked on my head. But after the hospital did this, after Judge Whirling stopped Dr. Garside in the middle of his bogus spiel and said, Dr. Garside, there's something I'm noticing here. I'm looking at the defendant's file, And I don't see the part in his sealed court file where there are tests. And Judge Garside looked totally astonished when Mr. Garside, without even looking at him, said, "We lost them." I took those tests in a sealed, locked ward. When they take a test like that, the first thing they do is give copies to everybody. So they gave a copy to Ritmanak, they gave a copy to Vera French, they gave a copy to Dr. Basker, they gave another copy to Vera French, they gave a copy to Garside, they gave another copy to Vera French, the hospital kept a copy, and there were probably more copies than that. They lost all the copies of my tests. Now, the reason why they brought this bogus charge and tried to defraud me, which is what Judge Whirling ruled that they did, was try to defraud the county, and they did that by trying to use the court to intimidate me. Because I get this bill 3 weeks after after they tell me I'm not in need of mental treatment at this time. I get a bill for Oh, hey, look, I know how it is. I really do. Uh, the, the point of this call is that I can prove, because I had a recording device on me, that when Lisa Davis reported that I was being violent and I was making threats, that I was not. I can also prove that I was invited into that hospital by its administration to pick up a referral to Iowa City hospitals, because when I had those conversations, I was talking to them just like I'm talking to you. I also was told by Janelle Swanberg of Legal Aid that she talked to hospital administration and that they said there would be no problem with my just going into the triage desk and getting a note, which would be prepared for me. So what ends up happening? So I want to know, is it permissible for a doctor to lie to a magistrate so that a hospital can try to scam Social Security, Medicare out of $5,000? Well, that you can hear it. It's on YouTube. You can hear it on YouTube. That's right. Well, you can hear it on YouTube. I published it in its entirety. Now, I realize that I can't go in a hospital and I can't take patients. I can't do anything like that, so I didn't. You won't see any of that on YouTube. But because of the wrongful diagnosis I have of being totally insane, and look, you're talking to a person who hasn't taken a psychotropic drug ever since they received an overdose from them. And I only overdosed myself because I was trying to be a good patient so that I could play the guitar again. And what I found out when I was in court is that these drugs don't have anything to do with helping you if you have a seizure. And then I'm also told when I'm in court, the first thing the hospital should have done was give me a 24-hour EEG and maybe a PET scan. And the one thing they shouldn't have done was given me to a quack who didn't even speak English named Basker. And he asked me about my childhood. And I only got to tell him that being a Jew, I was beaten the hell out of every Christmas and Easter. That's as far as I got. And then he decided that I was paranoid. Ma'am, I was the smallest Jew, and I was the smallest kid in my class, and I was a Jew. And this country is anti-Semitic, and it is racist. That's not an illusion. Donald Trump was elected because this country is racist. Don't tell me he wasn't. So, look, what's the deal when I try to get a hearing? What's the deal when a doctor who has no business lying about me lies about me so that the hospital can defraud Medicare for treatment that was never delivered? And I was locked up, and I can prove that she lied. That's a false report. That's worth a year in the county, isn't it? The judge did. I've got it. Okay, well, you know what? I was unlawfully imprisoned. No, I think that when a doctor, you mean your system of mental health is going to allow Dr. Davis to lie. You're not going to make a sound? What about my mental health? Am I not supposed to feel like I'm a human being and deserve at least a little bit of protection after all of the libel that I've been put under for the last 30-some years? Don't you think that it makes a difference when a doctor commits a false report? That was a false report. She lied to a judge. So let's not split hairs, honey. Are you telling me that in this county and in this state, besides Genesis West being allowed to violate 2 laws, which I can prove have resulted in the deaths of more than a dozen people in the last 12 years? That's 1 person a year. In the year 2000, my friend Mondo Cahalas went to Genesis West, and he was suffering from respiratory distress, and he didn't have an insurance card, and he was escorted out by security, and he died 2 days later. In another instance, many years before that, after I published my website and started writing stories about the hospital, killing people in this way, I met a woman, a girl, posthumously through her parents. She was going to an after-prom dance, and there was a minor fender bender, and she bumped her head slightly against a window. As I understand it, she was taken to the hospital because of the little lump on her head, but she didn't have her ID, and she didn't have an insurance card on her. She was an honor student with a corsage and a prom dress, and the next morning she was dead from a subdural hematoma. That's the hospital you're trying to protect right now. If you want, I'll take a polygraph on everything I've told you. And I've written stories about this. Ma'am, I haven't been able to get medical care in this area for 4 years. I have been blacklisted. I can prove that. I can also prove that the hospital entrapped me, and their lawyer entrapped me, and they lied to Janelle Swanberg so that what she told me would entrap me, and I had been beaten up there 4 times. And you're telling me it's okay for me to be assaulted for no reason? Is that what you're telling me? And you're telling me that a person who is indigent, I'm responsible for paying an attorney hundreds of dollars an hour so that I can be protected by the system that you oversee. You oversee this system. Now, God damn it, you can do something about what happened, can't you? You can make noise, can't you? You know, I didn't raise my voice like that when I was talking to Dr. Davis. But I can raise my voice to you because apparently you're some kind of a stupid-ass pencil pusher who really doesn't care about what happens to the indigent or the crippled or the infirm. But you know, you should care about what happens to me because I'm really none of those things. I'm a goddamn journalist. I have over 35,000 readers on the web. That includes almost 20,000 readers on SiteJabber. You're going to be on SiteJabber. And this video that I'm making is going to be on the web. Unless we can come to an agreement. Can we come to an agreement that I have some rights and somebody should speak up to help me? Can we do that? And don't call this extortion. I expect this is a process of the law. I should not be attacked by somebody and beaten. Just for the purposes of my Medicare being rated for nothing. So what are we going to do? Look, I don't want there to be any. I'm going to publish this anyway. I'm publishing this in about 10 minutes. But I'm going to give you 10 minutes to answer the question. You think you can, like, make a little mouse squeak in somebody's ear? Think you could do that for me? Well, what I want you to do is I want a hearing. That's right. I'm an attorney. I've been. There is a post-conviction thing that Michael Wolf, he threw out 4 post-conviction relief applications. The 7th Judicial District, I can prove that the 7th Judicial District has been denying me due process for over 10 years. Well, you know what's between me and the mental health system? What's between me and the mental health system is that you are running a department that held me in an involuntary imprisonment and beat me up for no reason. That's what's happening today. That's what happens. That's what's been happening since the 24th of June. No. But this situation has festered since the 24th of June. You know, after I was beaten up, I have been referred to various plain clinics who have also scammed Medicare for they don't even examine you, they just ask you what you want or what you need. I went to an orthopedic surgeon who took a picture of my back, and after he was through going, Jesus Christ, how do you stand it? I said, look, I'm not here to get narcotics. I only take these things when I really need to. Could you, if you give me a prescription for a dozen of these, I can guarantee you they will last me for a year. So he said, well, I don't get prescriptions. I don't know why. He's a doctor. So he sends me to 3 different pain clinics. And they all took the money. They all told me that they were going to call this into Walgreens. And then I find out a week later, no, they're not going to give it to me, and they're not going to call me into Walgreens. And that and that they're associated with with Genesis West, and they can't have me as a patient anyway. And even though they can't have me as a patient, they still charge Medicare. What kind of crap is that? So, what about this beating I received and this false report? Can you help me with that? You have no idea? Well, then everybody's going to look at you, and everybody's going to look at you. And you know, if you've ever had your picture taken, you can believe me. I got a guy who works for my website who's going to search the web, and he's going to be able to find it. And everybody's going to look at you, and they're going to wonder what the hell you do. That you can't do anything. Since when? No, it sounds, you know, it's not, no, it sounds like you know that there's a doctor who is using your system to take money from the government for no reason. You know that. You also know, if you look, You want me to get here? I'll give you my website address. And you can hear this. I think that would be good. You really need to hear it if you don't believe me. You know, and I'm not asking you to believe me, just carte blanche. I'm not asking you to do that. But, you know, I am not well, it is my channel on YouTube. Now my channel on YouTube is number 12950 On that is a videotape that I made because I didn't want to show the inside of the hospital or take the risk of having any patients. So it is the soundtrack from that video. The first thing you will hear is this woman is asking me to give her my insurance proof of insurance. Now I'm just going in there to pick up the referral. They're not supposed to examine me. The last mental examination they gave me cost an insurance company nearly $500,000 in punitive damages because they didn't follow medical or psychiatric criteria, because they almost killed me. And then when I got competent enough to be able to read and write and spell and take a look around, I started writing about this felonies they're committing, a state felony and a federal felony, which killed a longtime friend of mine and several other innocent people. And if I would have had a subdural hematoma had been delivered to me on October the 14th of 1982, you wouldn't be talking to me right now either, because they refused to examine me, and I had a huge lump on my head. Now, the name of that video is called Hospital Brutality, Aided and Abetted by Lane and Waterman. Now, they've already sent me a letter. They want to sue me. And I said, go right ahead. Because I can prove that Mike Byrne of Lane and Waterman told me to go to the hospital. And after he told me to do that, he called up the hospital. And then the hospital tells their employees, well, we're going to get him in here, and we're going to hold him, and we're going to charge his insurance. And they probably told the guy to beat me up because they don't like the stories I've written about him, which are true. Now, I don't know. I know that you could get a judge to look at this because you're with mental health and you're with the health system. You've got to go back and open up some sealed court files, because there's a ton of people who got a few dollars because Grandpa might have been worth something after he had his attack and was taken to a Genesis health system, and they wouldn't let him in because he left his wallet on the table. But here's something. But that case from 85, that proves that the hospital attempted to lie to the court before, that the hospital lied to the court and brought false charges against me, that the court found that the hospital didn't do tests, that they attempted to intimidate me into signing a waiver so that Scott County would pay for those tests. Now you can get that file opened. I'm sure that you could. I know that this is true. Now you might want to say this guy's a nutcase, but I'm not. I proved that in civil court. So, please, this is all I'm asking for. I'm just asking for a little dignity here. I didn't do anything that I was not told to do. I knew that there was a lifetime trespass that was placed against me at Genesis West. And the reason why that was placed against me is because when Judge Whaling found out that my conversation on the crisis line was totally innocent, and that the hospital had used the crisis line to bring this false charge against me because I had made a recording of that myself. And you know, when I got out of jail, I didn't even know what I was charged with until the morning I got out of jail. I was released on my own recognizance. Now, dig this. The charges against me were that I threatened to launch, shoot, or discharge an incendiary device into the hospital. Ma'am, what judge in his right mind would let a person out of jail who had threatened to bomb a hospital? If I was looking at my own case, I wouldn't let me out of the hospital. I got let out of my own recognizance. And I'm handed this thing about this conversation. You know, when I started talking to the system, and I was treated crappy from the very beginning, just because my hair was long and I had a beard. The hospital sent me, they referred me to a neurologist then, real quick. But it took a while because I couldn't play guitar anymore, so then I went to work for Workfare. And the county knew they were getting sued because my parents were looking for an attorney. So then, all of a sudden, Workfare decided that I had to go to Vera French to keep receiving Workfare. And Julie Malik, who worked at the hospital, told me not to go. She would find me a doctor. But I quickly found out that when you've been beaten up by two pigs, no doctor wants to get involved in a lawsuit. So when it's a police altercation of any kind, these guys had been beating people up for 20 years. They were called bump and thump. In any case, I think you could do something for me. Okay, the ones who were involved in the initial incident so long ago, they were Scott County posse members. However, the pig who beat me up in the hospital in July just so happens to be an off-duty. It was a guy who's moonlighting. He's a Davenport pig, and when he was when he saw me come into the hospital, he took his name tag off because he knew he was going to pound the fuck out of me. Pardon my French, but he knew what he was going to do, and he knew that he was going to do that because I encountered him 2 years ago when he was helping scumbags sell drugs on the sidewalk in front of Shenanigans Bar and Grill. And we've got videotapes of him doing that. There had been so many stabbings at Shenanigans that every Saturday night you would think the whole police department was parked on 3rd Street. I mean, it was lined with police cars. There were cops all over the place. But you know what I noticed while I was walking around there? That nobody was being prevented from being able to pick up crack cocaine because you can smell it. And nobody was being prevented from getting crack cocaine at Shenanigans. That's what my website did concern itself with, the tracking and trailing of cocaine and other substances like that through the Quad Cities. And I caught everybody. I was a rich guy. I took $7,000 out of Merrill Lynch Pierce, and I bought video equipment. Some of it was so small and sophisticated, you could put it in the buttonhole of your shirt. I had about 30 or 40 people who were criminals, and they had the look, and we infiltrated a lot of family drug cartels, and we got information on everybody. And I got Mr. Collins dismissed from the Davenport Police Department, and if you don't believe me, you can call Tom Geyer and ask him. The Davenport Police Department is one of the most corrupt police departments in this state. However, their twin police department at Rock Island is just as corrupt. I caught them too. And all that's on my website, freeworldkgb.freeservers.com. Now, the feds have been in my website since my incarceration, and they messed my website up. And I spent a year and a half working on it, and I decided, well, to hell with it. But I think if you don't understand the language, you can certainly understand what the pictures depict. Okay, you know, when I was with Wanda, I was trying to get her therapy. And I took her to some therapists here. I can't remember their name. And, you know, they made an appointment to talk to her. But they never saw her. Well, I'm going to be busy this week. They never, ever saw her. I couldn't get her therapy. And I took her to people who I said, look, Wanda has these nightmares. She wakes up screaming. I've had her to a shrink and 3 other psychologists. They think these are repressed memories. And Wanda has her appointment and comes out crying. And she's telling me, these people don't believe in repressed memories. And you know what? They told me they did. They told me that they knew all about this, and they would treat Wanda with kid gloves, and they left her she left crying. In 2008, I took Wanda to the dentist. And I had to go run a little errand, and when I got back, I found out that the butlers had taken her from the dentist's office. And she spent the next 4 days at 415 West 14th Street. No, West 13th Street. And I know that because I had people cover that with video 24/7. I had been doing that for months. So I know that when Wanda went into that crack house, and I know when the police took her out on February the 8th. She went into that crack house on February the 4th as an unwilling guest. And she came out in police custody on the 8th, and she was taken to North, and she was dropped. And she had pharmaceutical drugs in her that she doesn't have prescriptions for. She had marijuana in her that I did not give her. She had cocaine in her, which the butlers specialize in selling. Now, it is a felony for people to be feeding a disabled person drugs. And the court had ample evidence of that because they had Wanda's drug test. When I first met Wanda, I was told that her family cornered me after they found out where she lived, because they didn't know that my parents had given her refuge in my house, and she could live there for free because she wasn't getting any money from her payee. So these people cornered me at a local bistro, and they told me that they had to deal with 5-0 on both sides of the river, and that they can do whatever they want. And I should persuade Wanda to sell their product out of my house because I'd have a bunch of money and I'd have a free house. And I said, now just a minute. I already have a lot of money. My house will never be free because I'm always going to have to pay taxes on it. And I don't want to be a vampire, and Wanda doesn't want to be around you. So, and I asked them if the letters F-O meant anything to them. And at that point in time, the police started to arrest me. I'm sure. Okay, well, you know, and that's a lot. Yeah, this is a lot for people to see and hear. Are you going to help me with this? Well, you will see. Well, I'm going to tell you what. I'm going to make you a promise. I'm going to start tonight. People are going to look at you like you're Dr. Mengele, and you're not even a doctor, are you? This is Dmitry Ivanovich with the naked truth.
Yes, that person's name is LORIE ELAM. ELAM. And she's about to be famous. Good night.